Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Mysterium 2020 panel. We're so happy to have you all with us and back again. We have an incredible lineup this year. We've got Tim, Larkin, Jack Wall, Marty O'Donnell, and Robyn Miller with us. All of them have done an incredible job of writing music for the Myst games, sound design, and have created legendary works, and we're really pleased to have them all with us. Thank you guys for coming and being here. Robyn, Jack, Tim, and Marty. How you guys doing today?
Good. Doing great. Doing great.
Excellent.
Awesome. Awesome.
Here. Is there not a screen where we get to see all the people watching us?
I was wondering that as well, because we're kind of in the dark over here.
Yeah, I want to see their faces. I don't like this.
We're in a submarine right now.
We are indeed.
All right.
Hopefully we can get that sorted out in a minute. But in the meantime, just sort of a topical question, which any of you are free to answer in any order that you wish. Since COVID has started this year, how has that impacted your work and your industry and how you do what you do?
Nothing. It's all exactly the same.
It's all the same.
Just alone in the studio making music. Nothing's changed.
No. Are you collaborating with anybody via Zoom or any of these platforms, or are you still able to have people in the studio and record with them and do things as per usual?
Well, just from recording musicians, it's all remote. That's the one thing that's very different. Obviously, everything's different. It's not the same. That was me making a joke.
Yes. We have humor here. Yes.
Ha ha ha.
Yeah.
So it's I was recording an orchestra last month, and everything is like usually I would go to the wherever that is, and I couldn't. So we just sit in our remote studio and just watch what's going on. But with technology, Zoom, of course, for talkback, and there's another technology called audio movers that enables us to hear pretty without a too significant delay what's going on and what it sounds like. It sounds pretty good. So that's been my experience.
My biggest change because of COVID is that I haven't gotten a haircut in 4 months. So I started doing. Thanks. I'm thinking I'm going for the Beethoven length, somewhere around the Beethoven length, and I'll see if I can get it to do that Beethoven thing.
You wear it well. It's very, very, very fitting. It looks,
good.
Yeah, it looks good.
But I would at Discord, Slack, Zoom, FaceTime, whatever. Like we're doing all that stuff. I've got like a 32 person studio, and we're all on Discord and Slack. And the one fun thing is we use Discord for a happy hour every Friday at 4. So that's sort of fun. So and we've been pretty good at that. We all get together and share drinks and try not to work at that moment. Although it feels like we should be working because it feels like the exact same environment we're working in. But I try to prevent people from doing anything but drinking.
I hear you. And Tim, how about you? How's work going for you, man?
Yeah, it's I've been home for 4 months, whatever it is. Just working here. As I used to go back and forth to Valve every other week or so, but now I'm just home and doing the same thing: the Zoom meetings and an occasional happy hour. And I did remote recording with the Budapest Symphony, or film orchestra, I guess it is, but I wouldn't have been there anyway. And so it doesn't really change much. It's like Jack said, I mean, the truth is that most of the time we're kind of isolated just because of what we do, and we work by ourselves anyway. So the actual work aspect of it, I'm in the same room that I normally would be in when I'm doing it, except that I don't get to see the people face to face as much, which I do miss, by the way.
Yeah, me too.
For sure.
Absolutely. And Robyn, how about you, man?
Well, for composing, I mean, I don't do much composing, only when it's necessary. every once in a while I'll do a little short film or something like that, but I'm lucky when I get to do that. It's really a fun little gig that I run into once in a while, and it's all electronic when I do it. It's on my computer, and it's so I'm doing a short film that's coming up, and
Like the little potato.
I did that a little while ago. Yeah, it's very similar to that, and that won't change at all. It's going to be totally the same. So yeah, it's not going to change at all for that. Other than I think there would be a slight difference in me going out and talking to this person at a coffee shop here and there, and but it's just sitting in an office in front of my computer. I don't even have speakers for working on. Probably different to you other guys out there. It's just headphones.
Yeah.
My studio is so sorry. It's just really neat, really, and I put it together almost for any particular project, and I have a blast working on any particular project.
Like they say,
nice
it's not the gear, it's the individual work in the machinery, right? So
right. And it's a break. It's a break from other things I do.
Well, on that topic, to sort of segue in, I wanted to ask you about your short films and your music composition in them. I was checking out some of your stuff on your page, and I was looking at the soundtrack for The Little Potato, and I was really enjoying it. But also, it's an incredible story, and I just wanted to ask you how you got pulled into that.
It was a film production that my wife was doing, and we have a small production company. And later I turned into an executive producer on the film, but that was kind of only after I started doing the film or the music for it. And so, I mean, it's the story of this guy. He grew up in, it's a true story, a documentary of this kid growing up in post-Soviet Union Russia, and his mom. There's still a lot of turmoil at that time, and his mom was dying, to get out of Russia and to bring him out of Russia, and so she became a mail order bride, trying to get him to take him to the United States. And so it's that basic story. And then it's also the story of what they encountered in the United States. It's all of that compressed into a 10-minute film.
Yeah, see, it was a very
that was a
moving
blast.
project.
Cool. Great. Yeah. Yeah. And it's his coming out story as well. He sort of discovers he's gay, and so there's these two tangents the story takes. So it was really fun, traveling in those two directions in the story. And he wanted this real because he was so enamored with 80s music and 80s film, he wanted that style of music, which was, I grew up in the 80s, and so that was a blast to kind of flavor it with that style of music.
That's wonderful. I've got some questions that have come up here in the side on the chat. I'll sort of address them as they come up, so none of them get missed. We have from Telrov Chris the question for everyone: what is the musical piece that you have made in the Myst franchise that you're most proud of? And so, if you gentlemen would like to. I guess I'll go in order on my screen of just everybody's faces that I see. So I'll start with Tim. Tim, what in the Myst franchise, what piece are you most proud of?
Oh man, that's having to go back and try to remember the music that I wrote for this. But
Exactly.
I'd have to say, the one that I remember the most and the one that made the biggest impression on people was the gallery theme, which was the piece of music that had the solo soprano over the top, and that was for Uru. And I remember getting a lot of feedback from the the community regarding that piece. So I know they really enjoyed it. And then it also got picked up by Steven Spielberg, and he used it in his trailer for Munich, I think it was. So and
wow, that's cool.
yeah, from what I understand, it was actually a request from Spielberg to use that piece. So I don't know how he found out about it, but so I guess that would be one of my favorite pieces. And then I also got to record this a girl from Spokane singing it, and she was like 15 at the time, and just a phenomenal singer. And Tasha Kuntz was her name, and she did a great job on it and made a great impression. So anyway, that piece would probably is the most memorable anyway.
On that note, I was doing a little research and I saw that you used Maasai tribesmen chanting in one of your songs, and I wanted to ask you about because that's a group of music that I've always found interesting. Their rhythmic understanding and jumping up and down and using those to coordinate the pulses of the music. What got you into their music, and then how did you make that connection and coordinate recording those guys?
Well, that was really odd. Because of all places, this group of Maasai singers came to Spokane for like 3 months. They were here in the 3 months in the winter time. And I just heard that they were singing at this church and they were doing gospel stuff. So somebody said, you got to go check them out. They're really good. So I went down and I listened to them sing, and they were doing, again, it was gospel. So it wasn't stuff that I felt that was really usable for me, but I went and talked to him briefly, and talked to Robyn, you probably know him, Saranka, and talked to him about what else they do. And he was talking about the chants and all that stuff. So I remember bringing him into Cyan for 2 days, for 2 days to record. And I had him do all their chants, and then I had him do it individually. I was trying to kind of set up this little sample library type thing. And they came in the first day and they did all this recording, and they were dressed in street clothes.
Uh-huh.
And then Saranka said, we really need to do this again, because they sing much better when they're in their attire, their formal, not formal, but their native attire. So they all came in again the next day, and they're dressed in I don't know, I forget the name of what it's called, but it's these red kind of robes and shirts and stuff, and beads, and I mean, it was just so awesome. So we were in the main room there in Cyan just recording. There was about 8 of them, 8 or 10 of them. And then we had this again. They're there for like 3 months in Spokane the whole time of all.
So cool.
Came from Nairobi, Kenya, and so we had them over for dinner one night, and after dinner they just all sit down and start singing. I mean, that's just what they do.
Oh man!
I'm doing the chants, and we're jumping in the living room, and the doors were open to my house, and all of a sudden all my neighbors are down, and everybody. We had about 50 people in my house, and they're all singing and chanting. It was just the coolest thing.
Wow.
And so that's how that kind of came to be. And so then I just took those chants and incorporated them into some of the music, because I just loved that feel so much. And Uru was just this conglomeration of all these different styles of stuff that I was trying to do something unique in every instance of the music, and that just fit in really well. So.
That's great. Robyn?
Yeah.
What would you say is in the Myst franchise what you're most proud of?
Okay, it's really difficult for me to remember all of the music, but I would say, I think there is music in Myst itself, the Myst, rather than Ribbon, where it's the mechanical age, where the music has these mechanical sounds, and the rhythm gets really, really strange.
I noticed that you use a lot of space in your orchestrations, but you put the emphasis on these subtle variations and sort of fluctuations within rhythms for the transitions, and that space that is set up on either like bookending those transitions make those feel more tense or more moving because of that ambience around that. Is that something that Myst inspires the world's inspired you to write that way, or do you find that that's how you naturally write? That's what you gravitate towards?
No, I don't think it's how I naturally write. I think like if I was not writing for video games, I write a very, very different way. I write a much more narrative way. And when I was writing for video games, because I was the game creator, I was trying to leave room for this, to stay in the background, to kind of, pull back and let the game player dictate what, was to just sort of fall back. And that actually, that's really a challenge when you're writing music for a game. It is for me, when I was writing music for Myst and Riven, because I was so focused on the actual video games. And I knew those games inside out. And so I wanted the games to work so well that when I was writing the music, I kind of understood what the game should accomplish, that I knew the music should sort of just fall to the background. And so that's not a natural impulse when you're writing music. That's like the last thing you want the music to accomplish, is to fall to the background,
right,
and not tell a story. And I remember at times writing music, and I then would, it was so good. The music was so good. It told this great story. It was like, it hit these beats, and I had to like throw that music away. I'd kind of start from the beginning, because it rose to this great climax, and then it was like, oh, okay, that's a song. That's like a piece of music, a traditional piece of music.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, it had to go in a loop and not drag the player's attention away from the game. So it was interesting, because when I went and wrote the music to Abduction, that was much harder for me, because I didn't know the video game at all. I didn't understand that game, and I found myself much more writing these narrative pieces, or and I don't know that I did as good of a job. I don't think I did as good. I think the music was better, but I don't know that it fit into the environments as well. So that was an interesting sort of journey to take.
And
in terms of the broader question there, which was my favorite pieces, I think I really enjoyed the mechanical age pieces, because like I don't even understand. I'm not really that great of a musician or a composer, but I tried to like not even know what the timing was. I just started. I didn't use I didn't set timing in my in the program or the DAW. I just started a rhythm, and then I'd lay other rhythms on top, and it ended up with these very complex rhythms of machinery, and then it was all sort of, it felt pushed to the background, and I really was happy with the way that ended up relating to the game.
That's wonderful. And Jack, what about you, man? Myst franchise music that you're most proud of?
Most proud of Robyn's music in the first Myst game. Only because like and this is I just want to shout out to Robyn right now. Like, I don't think I would be a composer if it wasn't for that first game, because I played it in '94. I was at that time I was a recording engineer and a producer. I was making records in New York City and working at big studios and stuff like that. My girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, was a game designer, and she goes, "You got to play this game." I said, "Okay." So I think I even bought a Mac so I could play it. I bought like a new Mac or whatever. And
it's the right platform.
What's that?
That was the right platform to play it on.
That's right.
in my opinion. Yes.
Exactly, it was. And I put the game in and I got lost in it. And the music was like, it was an interesting game because I don't think there's ever been a game quite like Myst where, you were just shown basically a picture. And the music and the sound created the entire experience beyond that picture. Like you could really fill in the blanks because of the sound. And that's the genius of Myst. And I don't think it's ever been recreated really, because technology has gone so far with 3D and all that stuff. I mean, even when we were making Myst 3, it was a completely different idea of what Myst was going to be. But it was such a huge thing I was like, wow, this is a huge new medium. I need to be involved in this. And thank you, Robyn. You were a huge inspiration.
Wow. Thank you.
So
thank you.
And then of course, when it got to Exile, this was, 1999, we were making this game. So this is like 7 years later after Myst came out. And, we could do more things with it. And I wanted to introduce the concept of melody because we could, and then, so we had to be really creative not to overdo it because you're still spending time in these areas. You don't want it to get repetitive. And I think that's what Robyn was trying to avoid.
And Myst 3, that was your first orchestral score, wasn't it?
It was really it was like my fourth overall score that I had done. It was kind of a miracle to get chosen. I had to audition and all this with Presto Studios, who was making it, and with my good friend now, Dan Irish, who was the executive producer at I can't remember the company it was, but it turned into Mattel, but it was some other company. Anyway, it was, Dan wanted, hey, do orchestra. I was like, okay, I've never done that before, but I'll give it a shot. Anyway, so probably the piece I'm most proud of is the first one, which is the Myst 3 main theme, because it was, we used, my whole concept behind this was like, let's use really interesting instrumentation, let's use stuff we don't hear every day. And I was always been a huge fan of Peter Gabriel, and it was the Last Temptation of Christ, I think.
Sounds right.
Score he did, and he brought in this doo-doo player for that, and I just thought it was the coolest sound, so I wanted to use that for that. And then I found this woman, Susan Rawcliffe, who made her own instruments, literally made her own wind instruments out of clay, and there were this crazy array of things, and we would just experiment with that. And it was just such a fun exercise in making that score. But I think Myst 3 main thing was probably my favorite. And like Tim, it got used for some big movie. I can't remember, it was like Batman or something. It got used, 30 seconds of it got used for the beginning of that trailer for whatever movie that was. I think that's a pretty good,
Most definitely.
choice
Yeah.
for me. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool.
And Marty, what about you? Myst franchise?
Well, I have
what are you most proud of?
two pieces I'm super proud of. One was a suite based on Robyn's music. Once again, Robyn, kudos, thank you so much, because I was doing commercials and film scores. And then when Josh Staub came over to my house back in '93 and showed me the beta version of Myst, I saw it, I heard it, I got lost in it, and I was like, that's what I want to do instead. I want to switch my career and do this. So I thought, in order to get, Robyn probably doesn't remember this, but I tried several things to get Robyn and Rand's attention, to make him notice that I was out there. So I did a suite based on Robyn's music, and part of the suite was some stuff I actually composed. So I snuck my own stuff in there. It was called the Myst Suite, and I sent it to Robyn and Rand. And I think they maybe heard it. I'm not sure. But anyway, they allowed me to fly out there and start working on sound design for the game. And then during that period, I was like, of course, pitching to be co-writer with Robyn on the score to Riven. So I took one of Robyn's pieces that was sort of early in development. I think it was Gen's theme. And I did another sort of treatment of that. And that was so successful that Robyn said, yeah, I'm doing all the music. Marty, you're not doing any music. So that's how. So those are the only two pieces of music. I worked on sound design on Riven, and but I loved Robyn's scores to both Myst and Riven. I think Robyn, I'm going to speak for him now. He's not allowed to speak about this.
Sorry, Robyn.
I think Robyn just felt like the way it felt to me was that he knew the game so well that he knew what he wanted to do, and I just don't think he wanted anybody else to sort of mess with that sort of singular musical vision for Riven. And I thought it worked out great. I always wish I could have collaborated on music with Robyn a little bit more than I did, but those are the only two pieces I sort of did in that universe. I think if you look hard, you might be able to find them someplace out there. I think they got online, and so you can look for them. But that's about it. But I loved my time working with Robyn and Rand on that game, and Tim and I worked remotely. I think we only talked on the phone a couple of times. That was actually a remote gig for both of us, pretty much. So that was really interesting. It's sort of come full circle. So many people working distributed now and remotely. But that's what got me into the game business. And so after that, other people allowed me to do music for games. So it was okay.
Robyn has really influenced game music, I think.
Yes,
In a huge way, no joke. Really, I mean,
absolutely. No, I think I remember. There's so many different people that have talked about playing Myst for the first time who are composers, in the game business. Yeah. It's funny, Robyn, you say you grew up in the 80s. I just did an interview with Tom. Most of you guys here know Tom Salta. He's a game composer, but he also does a podcast on 80s memorabilia. So he interviewed me about 80s TV commercials. So I got to go back in time and think about all the TV commercials I did in the 80s. Which was kind of mind-blowing. Anyway, that's just an aside.
You mean Austin Wintry? Are you talking about Austin's thing?
No, Tom Salta.
Tom Salta, what was that for?
Well, he has a podcast, which is two guys talking about the 80s or something. And they talk about, games and TV commercials and movies and clothes, whatever. They both grew up in the 80s. I was already an adult in the 80s, so I was actually influencing them by doing Flintstones vitamins commercials and Mr. Clean commercials and stuff like that. So,
next question I've got, which is for Tim and Jack. You guys are re-releasing Myst 3, 4, Uru, and 5 soundtracks on Jack. Is it your label? Can you guys tell us a bit about that and how that came about?
Yeah, sure. Last year's Mysterium, where I met you, Nate, that was really fun. Got to hang with everyone. I found out, I didn't even know this, but Ubisoft had a license for Myst 3 and 4 and I guess 5 and Uru, right? Tim, is that correct? That was an Ubisoft thing, or?
That's a good question.
Yeah, nobody knows. Anyway, people started saying, hey, where are your soundtracks? I didn't even know they weren't live because Myst 3 and 4 were already digitally released by Ubisoft. And then I learned after that Myst 5 and Uru were not digitally released. But and I was up there talking to your dad, Nate, who was at Cyan at the time. And I said, do you know what happened to the soundtrack? Why are they not up anymore? And it turned out that their license had expired. So they reverted everything back to Cyan. And I just said, I do have a record label. It's mostly for meditation music and stuff like that. It's a whole side thing I do. And I said, but, I know how to do this. I can release this music. Some of it is very ambient. It'll go into our playlist.
I was gonna say it's very fitting. Yeah.
Yeah. So he said, much to my surprise, because this never happens in games, he said, yeah, let's do it. I was like, okay. And then Tim heard about this and he said, well, we should put out Myst 5 and Uru as well. So we did. We put it all out a couple of months ago. And
is it in one singular place where people can access it, or where?
It's everywhere. It's just digitally released. So you can listen to it on Spotify, Apple Music, any store around the world. It's released worldwide. You can find it literally anywhere.
That's great that y'all did that.
You can't buy it as a CD right now, which is really pissing people off right now. Where I want it on FLAC or I want it on CD, none of this.
Vinyl,
What about
vinyl?
What about vinyl? I was going to say, yeah, vinyl.
Yeah. Well, that's not really
Later.
a business I'm in. If somebody wanted to do that.
Those and cassettes are making a comeback too. So if you guys want to start pressing cassettes as well.
No, not cassettes, but vinyl. I got a vinyl presser up here who's really, really fun. Jack, he's
what would be really
guy.
fun is to release the entire set and do like all kinds of great artwork and do like a box set of all of the soundtracks, Myst, Riven, all of them.
Yeah.
That would be huge, right? And then we do like a limited pressing or something. Yeah.
Should do it. Do it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to draw another question.
All right, I'll talk to you guys later about
this. On a different Zoom call. Here we go. This one is for everyone as well. This is from Aiden Stedmister. Question for all. What one game would you like to have composed for if you did not do the title you worked? What one game in the would you? I'm sorry, this one the way. I might have to skip that one. This one is for you, Marty. What are your thoughts on the anniversary editions of your original Halo music?
Let's see. I'm honored that they decided to redo all that music. There were some things about it that I don't quite understand. It probably had to do with relationship between Bungie and Microsoft at the time they were doing it. So they weren't allowed, the composers there weren't allowed to communicate with me about what they were doing, which to me was really a shame because I would have loved to have just participated and given them scores or MIDI files so that they could have had less work to do. They had to do it all by ear, which was, and Lenny did the orchestrations and Tom Salta did all the synth work. And, they were trying to figure out exactly what I did. And I wouldn't have remembered what I did. I wouldn't have been able to figure it out completely by ear. So I thought that was a monumental task that they did a really good job on. But I wish I'd been allowed to help them out. I think it would have been just easier at least. So, I frankly didn't understand the need to necessarily re-record because they didn't really change much. So I don't have a big opinion about it. It was one of those things that I'm honored that they did it. So.
Gotcha. I've got a question for you. How did you get Steve Vai? What was the conversation or whatever involved to get Steve Vai in on Halo 2?
Yeah, well, that was Nile Rodgers was a music producer who decided to get into the game music distribution business because of the soundtrack to Halo. He really liked Halo. So he contacted me and we started working. He said, I can help you get musicians for Halo 2 because we were in the middle of working on Halo 2. And I was like, that'd be great. I mean, whoever, whatever, I don't know who you can get. And he goes, well, yeah, I can get Pink. I can get Steve Vai, I can get all these different people. And I said, well, whoever you want to throw at me, let me know. And I thought that would be the end of that. But sure enough, he called me up and said, Steve Vai is coming into Seattle. You should book a studio. I'll meet you there and we'll do a session with Steve Vai. So that was all Nile Rodgers, which was a blast. I really never thought that was going to happen. But
was it just one session? Just sit
one
down
session.
And just riff like crazy?
Yeah, he was Steve Vai was coming in to do a concert with the guitar, 3 people, him and Satriani, and that night was Yngwie Malmsteen. Anybody who knows him.
Yeah.
It was a great concert. He came in that day, and so we had him for a few hours in the afternoon, and then he just came in and we played him the stuff. We had some tracks that he could play over the top of. I had some music written out that I was hoping I'd get him to play, which he did. So we just kept recording. He improvised for, a couple hours, and then that was it. And then I had all this pile of amazing Steve Vai performance that I
Did you
was able
use?
to edit.
Did you end up using the stuff you had written, or did you?
Oh yeah. I mean, it was.
Or was it improvised mostly?
Well, I mean, the best stuff that was done was improvised. That he improvised, and it was just amazing. But like, I still had him play along with some of the violin melodies and things, and then I would sneak that in. So, yeah, it was easier for him. He actually, I was a little bit nervous that maybe, as you guys know, guitar players tend to not read music that much.
Well, he's a virtuoso, so.
He's a virtuoso, and well, I mean, I knew he had worked with, Frank Zappa, and I knew Frank's stuff is insane. Yeah. So
gotta be a reader.
There'd be nothing I could throw at him that he couldn't do. And it's sure enough, he was able to do everything. So that was fun.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It's very cool. And
so do all of you read music then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All of you read. Yeah.
I know.
I don't.
Nate doesn't
at all.
No, Robyn, you're a gut player, right? I mean, you play keyboards, and you don't like to, you don't read music. But I've worked with so many musicians who don't read music, and it's like, it doesn't. Paul McCartney doesn't read music.
Okay. I took a year of piano lessons, so I can do about that well.
We're in the same boat, Robyn.
Okay.
So here's just a fun question that I thought would be interesting, is if you guys were stuck on the Myst Island and you could have one book, one movie, and one personal item, what would those things be while you're there? You guys have a favorite book or favorite movie?
A linking book to get the hell out of there.
That's cheating.
You found the loophole.
The linking book back to Earth, right? That's good.
Well, we can move on.
I think that's a good answer.
Drum up, linking book to get off. All right, moving on from that one.
You just gave us the answer that we all have now. So.
Right.
That's the one I was.
That was a good answer.
All right, here's another question from the wonderful Mysterium community. This one is from the Pack in W for Robyn. Did you come up with the original linking sound? If so, how did you come up with it?
Okay. Rand and I have some different memories of this. Because, Rand just had a memory recently that I made for the original Myst, actually made that memory or made that sound with my mouth. I actually verbalized that sound and then did effects to it. I literally did that for the original sound. I don't remember doing that at all. But, you can imagine someone doing that. Echoes, reverbs, and then a bunch of stuff layered on top of it. And that was the original sound. I don't know if that was me or Chris Brandcamp, but possibly someone did that. But then I do know for Riven, we totally redid the sound with synthesizers and other things possibly. And it was a brand new sound that I just created. And it had nothing to do with anybody doing, creating, like it was not verbalized in any way. So there were different sounds that were created. But that whole story of a verbalized linking sound, I that's something Rand remembers and I don't. I'm sure he's right
Yeah.
since he remembers it.
Right. That's great.
Yeah.
That sort of ties into this next question by Catherine Charles. It's also for you, Robyn. She says, I'm curious how you choose the timbres of the original Myst score to get such evocative textures out of those various orchestral, industrial, and percussive sounds. Follow up for all, how did the sound of that original score inspire your instrumentation choices?
Yeah. The original score, it's not like I was, had a broad, had a lot of choices. I had one instrument, one synthesizer.
Proteus.
So yeah, Proteus MPS plus, and the plus stood for orchestral sounds. So I could, every sound you hear on the Myst soundtrack comes from that one synthesizer. And I was able to take particular sounds, whether it be like a strange, very synth, sound, or more traditional orchestra sound, like an oboe, or a synthesizer, or a traditional something from an orchestra, and I was able to run it through all sorts of something, effects of all different types within that synthesizer, and the output of those things directly to the album. I mean, that's everything you hear on the album came from that. But I didn't have a lot of the ability to, I had barely any ability to get any more sounds than that. I mean, there was nothing. It was just all very.
You did this all at your home too, right?
Yeah.
Your home studio? Yeah.
Well, half, I think half of it, I started it at my home, and then we very quickly moved it to this little tiny office we had.
The Red Robyn office?
Over Chris Brandcamp's garage. And
okay.
I worked at Chris Brandcamp's desk. This keyboard was there at his desk, and I would work in the evenings. And this is kind of ridiculous. I was sitting on the other side of Chris Brandcamp's desk. He was our accountant / sound designer. Because we needed a sound designer. It's like, hey, Chris, you want to do the sound design? Sure. And he was a musician as well, and he understood sound. And so I would be working, and he would be sitting there like, hey, Chris, you want to listen to this? And I'd take off my headphones and hand it to him. And he's like, oh, I love the sound of that oboe. How about making it a flute? How about trying a flute? And I would, it was great having someone to listen to that. And he was he was an ear, another person to just kind of give me feedback more than anyone else. And it was just a ridiculous sort of setup that I had. But I worked on that album for 2 weeks at night, and I look back on that. I've mentioned this to other people, like, how did I write that thing in that amount of time? I don't know how I did that.
Right.
It was insanity, because I was working during the day, creating the game. All of us were working, creating the game, and we were never expecting to do music when we did Myst. It was an idea that came to us halfway through the game. We wanted it to be a real place, like a real environment. And in real environments, you don't have music. That was a ridiculous idea, that you would walk into the planetarium and music would start playing. That would just throw you out of the game. That was more what you did in a film, but in our world that we were creating, we had this idea that no, we would, it had to be real. We had to place the player in these environments, and music would ruin that. And so we did that. We placed one piece of music. We tried it with one piece of music, and we were kind of blown away by it clearly worked. And once we did that, we started writing music without time and
Robyn,
without a budget.
This is what attracts probably all of us to this game is that we come from, professional places that have rules of how you do things, and here's how film scores work, and here's how a game should work. Seeing Myst, there was such a freshness to it. It was obvious that the people who made Myst were not going by anybody's rules.
Right.
It didn't feel like, oh, you were making it up as you went along. It just had such a freshness and such a vision that was exciting to people like me and Jack and Tim. I mean, immediately we were like, well, yeah, we want to work on things like that. We want to work with those people because they're not being constrained by, idiot publishers or, rules of this is how you do things. Not that not all publisher idiots. I'm not saying that.
That was actually one thing that was very, very nice. That was one thing that was very nice about working on Myst is that we got our funding from a Japanese company, and they were completely hands off. They never, ever checked up on us. They never asked, just look at what we were doing. They just totally trusted everything we were doing. And we worked really hard to make something great, as best as we could make it. But, we had total freedom with that project. And
that should be a lesson to everyone.
You never get that. No one ever gets that. And so, yeah, we were in a unique position. So that was wonderful. So we were so privileged to have that position.
So awesome.
I've got a question for Tim Larkin by Kalum Traveler. Now that we've seen the Descent demo and how Badlands was used as what ostensibly could have been Uru's opening theme, could you briefly describe the thought process behind creating the track?
I haven't seen that demo, so I'm not sure exactly. But I think that track was, interestingly enough, I composed that track before I was even working really on Uru. I was working at Sierra Online and working on Middle Earth there, and I was talking with Tony and Ryan about doing sound for Uru. They were starting to gear up and get things moving, and so one night I remember I was just sat down and wrote a track, thinking, oh, this is kind of what the direction that, given the information that I had about the game and the atmospheres and so forth. This is kind of a track that I thought would be really cool. And they hadn't decided on who was going to do the music for the game or anything. And I certainly wasn't at the time even really thinking about that, but just the track just came up. And I remember writing it in the studio that I was working in up in Oakhurst at Sierra Online. And I just sent the track down there, and it actually I ended up doing a theme kind of based off of that, but it never really made it in the game until a lot later. And I think it ended up in one of the expansions, but not in the initial game, if I remember. So it was just kind of an afterthought, and just kind of popped into my head. And that actual track was done like in a day, or a night, I should say. And I just sent it along. And then I remember when I finally got there and set up my office at Cyan and started working on sound design for the game, because I had done sound design in Riven. And I was thinking that Robyn was probably going to end up doing the music for Uru, to be honest. And then he just came up, he said, yeah, this is a nice track. Do you want to do the music? And I said, okay. So that's how that happened, and that's how that track kind of came to be. It was really just kind of a one night, just kind of picturing the game, and came up with that track, and that was it.
This is a question for all. Would you all ever want to come back to Myst and do a remix of an old track or a new piece just to play in the universe again?
Sure.
Yeah.
I'd love to do my first piece in Myst. That would be great. If Robyn would let me.
Mm-hmm.
I actually just I don't like returning to the Myst pieces. I like the fact that they're kind of frozen in time. That's a thing I did. It's like that's what they were, and that's how they were recorded. They have their mistakes. When I listen to the Myst music, and I've had to, because there's, I've had to for certain reasons, and for re-releases and things, but I kind of like that. Even the mistakes are what people get used to, and people tend to like that. They play the game, they get really used to how that thing sounds. That particular version of the thing with the game, and if it changes, I don't think it's the same. I don't think it feels the same anymore.
Yeah.
Although it has a certain, there's something kind of fun about it or gimmicky about it. Maybe it just feels gimmicky to change it a little. But for me, it's not satisfying to go back and change it.
Yeah,
I agree with that. I feel like
100%.
I feel like, if you when you're doing the music you're doing for a particular thing, you're doing it with from a very particular viewpoint. You're on a team, you're making something together, and it feels like it always feels to me like, when I'm writing music, I often say that your first idea is always your best idea. Like when I started writing for TV about 6 years ago, there's no time in television to rethink what you're doing. And I remember I was talking to I can't remember what it was specifically about, but I was talking to Michael Giacchino, and because he was doing so much TV music at the time, and he said, just trust your first thought. And I started to do that, and it changed everything about how I compose. Like I stopped second guessing myself. I stopped trying to look for the perfect idea, and I started looking for the first idea. And it really is that way. I mean, your first idea is almost always your best one, because that moment in time, you're seeing something fresh. And the more you look at something and try to, I got a better piece of music in me, it becomes less fresh. And so the music becomes less relevant to me. And it's the same with like remakes. Like I'm not a big fan of listening to somebody else's take on the original song. The original song is the best one. It always will be.
Yeah.
I know. I don't know about that as much. I don't agree with that as much for myself. Like I enjoy, there have been songs that have been recorded and I've listened to then other people's versions of them and like them more than the original. And I'm pretty sure that someone could record Myst and I'm sure there's a version I would enjoy more. It's just that
I'm not talking about that. I'm not like if somebody else did my music, that'd be great. I'm just saying me redoing my music. No.
Me redoing it.
Right. That's what I'm talking.
It's just my own version. And in fact, I know this to be the case because I actually went back recently and for a particular reason for this I went back and I started re-recording one of my pieces from Myst, and I hated it. I hated doing it. I just like, it was just wrong. I mean, and I just like didn't even understand the piece. I didn't understand why I did things a certain way. Yeah. I just like, if I knew that if I went back and played that game, I would do nothing the same. I didn't even feel it. I didn't even feel the piece. So it's the kind of thing like, if I were to rewrite the Myst music today, if I were to rewrite a soundtrack for Myst, I would write something completely different. Sure. I think that's the basic gist of it.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is I'm a different composer today than I was 10, 15 years ago or 15 years ago now, I guess, when I did this, and it would be a total different soundtrack. I mean, I listened to some of the stuff that I did back then, and I think Robyn, what you said is really important. It's like that moment in time and the mistakes and everything becomes so attached to that place and that sound. Whereas, now it would be totally different. And I listened to some stuff, and I don't like some of the stuff that I did, and I totally get where you're coming from when you think, how did I write that, or what was I thinking? I have no idea. I mean, and actually, even a piece that I may have finished, last week, I feel the same way about. It's like, I don't know how I came up with that or where that idea came from, and I don't think I could ever go there again. It's every idea is so different and generally new that and unique. It's just going back is impossible, I think. And I do like the idea of, I mean, I've had other people do takes of different pieces from different scores over the years, and it's always, and I enjoy when people do that, because I love hearing somebody else's perspective on something that you did, because I know I could never do that.
Yeah.
So
Well, when you're creating something, you're literally in a different place. If I had to go back and look at one of my pieces and recreate that piece, now I'm being analytical about it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas before, when I'm just writing, it's coming from this creative space that is just flowing through me, right? And I'm not thinking about it. And it's like right brain, left brain kind of exercise. It's a very different thing to try.
Right. Totally.
I've
already been done.
I've been doing this, I call it my Inception series on my YouTube channel, where because especially during COVID, I'm sitting around thinking about other things to do. And Marcy, my wife, has archived a lot of old stuff. So I've been finding old sessions and old audio files and old everything from it goes way, way back, but I started with the Halo stuff and some Music of the Sphere stuff and Destiny stuff. But what I think is interesting is I agree with Jack. It's like your inception. When you're just being creative and you're just trying stuff out, what I like is listening to that and saying, oh, that's where that came from. That was when that little idea started. And that's how that happened. So I'm actually exposing that to the fans and saying, hey, by the way, if you want to hear how this came out, here's me noodling on the piano. And then
that's cool.
Yeah. So I have this whole sort of buildup of and then it turns into this thing, right? Yeah, what's funny about these pieces that I'm doing, it's a 10-minute long thing on Halo or whatever. And it has all these Inception pieces that I'm letting just flow, that I wasn't caring about the sounds I was using. I wasn't caring about production. It's just the way it came out. And I always knew at the time that I was going to go back and find the best stuff and make something real out of it. So I'm just letting that all be exposed to people who want to hear it. And I thought it would be, well, for hardcore fans, they'll sort of be interested in the Inception. Instead, they are, which is good. I'm glad they are. But then they're used to this new thing, which is this 10-minute long Inception piece with all of its mistakes. And like Robyn said, those mistakes end up being things that people like too. And I'm like, yeah, that's really strange, because I'm exposing this and somewhat embarrassed by some of it, but I'm letting people hear it. And then they end up liking that version. So maybe we work too hard. I don't know what it is.
It's funny because there's some pop or rock music that I like, and the low production quality is something I really love. And there's some music where the production is so bad, and I really grasp onto that, and I really love it. And you can hear the mistakes; they're glaring, but I love it. I mean, even the notes are out of time. I mean, everything's out. But I just if somebody went back, if the artist went back and changed that and fixed it, I would be so disappointed that they even felt the need.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I just love that when it came out in that time period, that's who they were. And now it's set in stone, and I have this nostalgic. Right now, I already have that connection to that person, who they were in that time period. Yeah, and I know that's how people feel about the Myst music. Because there's mistakes in that music all over the place, and so I think we all have those connections to music, whether it be music or art or video games or whatever it is. Those are important connections.
Yeah.
Boy,
Absolutely.
Marty, I got to hand it to you though, man. Being that exposed and open about your creative process. I know if people saw me write,
Absolutely.
never get hired again, man.
Well, at my age, I don't necessarily care whether I get hired again, but
Marty's just going to hire himself. So.
yeah, exactly. That's the only way I can get work.
Yeah.
The funny thing is thinking about your Kenyan thing. So, and Jack will know this because his wife actually had to duplicate my performance. So on the original Halo piece, I had this crazy, I wanted sort of like a West African, Middle Eastern chanty crazy guy singing. And no one would do it. So I ended up having to do it. So it's this, in the middle of the Halo music, there's this guy who's going, yeah, blah, 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 yeah, which is about exactly what I did. And that's how I was trying to describe it to the professional singer who was going to do it, and they wouldn't do it. So I ended up having to do it. I did it. I was embarrassed about it. I'm still embarrassed about it because I didn't do any work on it. I was just came out of my head. But now that people know it was me doing it, like I keep getting over and over again. I always thought that was some African Kenyan woman singer that does this thing. So Tim, I'm just saying, you didn't have to bother with all those great Kenyan singers. You could have just sat there by yourself and just blow it off and just do something, and people would love it.
You were the guy. I could have just hired you at the time.
Yes, exactly.
Well, gentlemen, thank you all so much for being here. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. And to the wonderful Mysterium fans, I'm sorry we could not get a chance to get to all of your questions. Everyone who did take the time and effort to write a question, thank you very much for doing that and participating and coming out and being part of this Mysterium 2020. And gentlemen, thank you all for being here so much and being gracious with your time and answering these questions and just talking about all the cool stuff that you do.
Right on.
Mhm.
Thanks for having us.
All right.
Yeah, thanks for having
Thank
us.
you.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks everybody for coming.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.